welcome to episode 50 of the Leading IT podcast, hosted by Tom Layden, the CIO from Longview, and me, Josh Rubens, CEO from Cloud Solutions Group. If you're new to the podcast, first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back. The purpose of our show is for IT leaders to discover unique and valuable insights into current trends from both sides of the vendor-client paradigm. We tackle relevant and time-sensitive topics like cloud, AI, cybersecurity, infrastructure, strategy and leadership, and how to deal with emerging IT threats and opportunities. So this week, we're hosting Steve Hunter. He's the ANZ Director of Engineering from Arctic Wolf. So, really excited to have Steve join us, but a bit of an security industry veteran. G'day, Tom. Welcome to episode 50. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it, Josh. Congratulations. 50th episode. It's great. How many, couple of years now? This is our third year of doing this rubbish.
It's got to be at least 3.
3 years, I think. Yeah. Tell you what, what happened is like a post-COVID experiment hasn't stopped, has it? No one's told us to stop.
No one's come in and told us to turn it down, so we've kept them going. But I appreciate you sticking it out with me, and it's been good fun.
And I'm always amazed. I bump into a few people occasionally. They go, "Oh, I heard your podcast." It's like, that's great. People are listening to it.
Yes,
it's always very positive.
Yeah, exactly. Always get some positive reviews. But 50. That's goodness me, that's a lot.
Well, that's plenty to talk about. So I've got some news. What have you got, Josh? Do you want to kick off?
I do have some news, and it's in the spirit of the topic that we've got today. So my first news piece is that so we all know about the Latitude Financial cyber incident that happened in March.
Yep.
So they flagged $76 million in cyber incident costs.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah. There's business case number for you, isn't it? It's like, how much do you want to spend on security? Well, if you don't, this is what you've got to pay.
So they had 225,000 customer records stolen, and it recorded an actual spend of $53 million in cyber post-tax cost.
Wow,
that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But what I also found, in addition to the just the direct financial impact, this was some comments from the managing director and CEO Bob Belan, however it's Belan. It said for a period of 6 weeks, new originations stopped, receivables declined, pricing actions were paused, and collections activities were significantly disrupted. So that's just not just IT disruption. That's to their core business. He did say that the work done by the team to safely restore systems and rebuild our business momentum has been extraordinary. So looks like the IT guys did a really good job, but despite that, still massive business disruption and costs. So I thought that was a lot. Yeah, I thought that was more severe than even I was expecting.
Yep. Yeah. No surprise. We'll talk more about this as we get into the podcast, actually. But there's the friends of mine who are connected to a recent case of reporting similar problems where security happens, but then the business just stops while they find out what the hell happens. Customers lose confidence. Business can't operate properly. It takes them a while to get the engine back on. And the clock's turning, so no surprise there. I've got some news on a different front. I'm going to sort of change the subject. 25-year anniversary of the iMac. Josh, do you remember that? The bulky Mac.
Yes.
They were like in blue and yellow. They came out in different colours. So 25 years ago, that sort of all-in-one computer that sort of revolutionised how people got onto the internet. Opened up that world, and then they sort of advanced into those really thin, sleek iMac all-in-ones, but anyway, it was a bit of a blast from the past. Did you have one of those?
I have one of those new, very chunky MacBook Pros. So I've gone back to the chunky ones with the new CPU in it. But wow, that's making me feel old.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
can now see me now, so
They
I
can
actually
verify that.
they can see I actually am on. So
But I think that was a big moment for Matt, because that was when Steve Jobs came back in to the business and started to really turn that business around. It was actually it was a loss making business for a while there. Steve Jobs came in with this concept of design, making computers accessible to the everyday person, opening up the internet, and the rest is history. Actually, after that, so
and
there
now
you
and now MacBook is the enemy of the IT administrator.
go. Yeah, but beloved by every student out there as well. So,
Correct. Yeah. Beloved by users, hated by sysadmins.
what else have you got, Josh?
All right, so I'm continuing on my list. This I don't know if I should find it funny, but but around the impact of cyber. But I did have a chuckle about this one. So Roy Morgan research finds that Singtel Optus is the most distrusted brand in Australia.
There you go. Yeah.
So what I did find the funny part was it's the first time any company has taken the top spot from Facebook since 2018.
Oh my God. There you go. That's some effort, right?
Yes. So Facebook number one, distrusted. So that takes a lot of effort. So the rest of them, so second is Facebook, then Telstra.
Wow.
News Corp and Amazon are the top five distrusted companies. It said that the change in the rank occurred after the data breach in September 2022,
Yeah.
at which time there was an immediate and sharp increase in distrust for the brand. So, going back to the point earlier about how the impact of these breaches, and there was just some comments about brands needing to be aware of the ongoing dangers that distrust presents, with lingering distrust a significant risk. And Medibank is now the sixth most distrusted brand.
Wow.
Sorry, so they've gone up. So it's lose on all angles with these cyber breaches. Yeah,
that's great. Like business case fodder as well. Yeah, you got hard numbers, PPI, you got brand problems, and now you can start quoting these actual examples of Optus. They overtook Facebook, and they didn't handle that. Remember that they did not handle the corporate communications very well at all at the time. And I do feel sorry for the CEO at the time, but it's just it's a great lesson on what not to do when you're in those situations as well. If you want to go back and visit that one. And I've got one final one for me is TechCrunch guys, TechCrunch being that news website. I'm doing some research on this. Sort of discovered that the SaaS model is actually under a lot of pressure at the moment. So it's sort of really interesting that they're saying that customers are getting really wise to the SaaS model where you buy in and then you're constantly being pummeled for feature upgrades and more cost and more cost. They're saying that people have wised up to that, and they're seeing the SaaS model starting to fall off, where people are cancelling subscriptions, downgrading subscriptions, and really starting to get their hands around that. It's taken 10 years, right, Josh, for people. I mean, what was pretty obvious, I would have thought, but it's taken them 10 years to understand. Actually, you know what? We can say no. You don't have to get the automatic upgrades or the extra features. You don't need the enterprise edition for many things.
Yeah, the old days of CIO utopia being SaaS platforms is bring on the Power Platform low code apps, Tom.
Low code apps, but we just got to be really smart about being aware of what's coming up and how to negotiate down, right, and how to not just get sucked into the next feature releases and the next licensing upgrades that are going to come your way. No surprise, really, but the guaranteed SaaS revenue model is starting to really be disrupted.
Yeah, not surprising. All right, let's bring our guest in. So Steve Hunter, welcome. So Steve leads Arctic Wolf's customer-facing engineering team in Australia and New Zealand. He's a Scotsman by birth. Won't hold that against you. But an Adelaide boy by upbringing. Well, we'll definitely hold that against you, Steve. Had a really interesting journey. So had his own SME IT business in Adelaide, led IT operations at BHP's Olympic Dam copper uranium mine in the outback. I want to hear about that. Spent about 16 years as an architect at Cisco before spending 5 years at an Israeli cybersecurity company in the leadership team, and took them through an IPO before they were gobbled up by private equity. I think that was Forescout, and recently left Google Cloud to join Arctic Wolf as part of the launch team, bringing them into Australia. So welcome, Steve. Welcome to the leading episode 50, actually, of the Leading IT podcast.
Thank you, Josh and Tom, and congratulations on episode 50. I have listened to about a third of them, actually, so I'll get through the rest of them soon.
No, you just say that. That's okay. We won't test you on any of those.
Yeah. So what was episode 34? Well, welcome, Steve. Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Arctic Wolf?
Yeah, absolutely. You've actually making me feel a bit old today because I'd only just left the mine and moved to Sydney when the iMac first came out. I can't believe that's been 25 years. It's blown my mind. So thanks very much for having me on the show. I lead the customer engineering team here at Arctic Wolf. And speaking of time moving quickly, we're almost at our 1 year anniversary coming into Australia. And I'll share a little bit about Arctic Wolf in a minute, perhaps. But so it feels to me like I only just left Google, sort of a few months ago. But actually, I've been here since late October last year. And we're just about to make 12 months in Australia, having just launched our Australian data center about 2 weeks ago.
Congrats. Definitely, you definitely hit the market hard. There isn't a conference or anywhere that Arctic Wolf isn't. So I think whoever's doing your marketing is doing a fantastic job.
Shout out to Simon for that. And I think that's not just Arctic Wolf. I mean, we've definitely come into Australia. You mentioned Latitude, and sort of on the back of Optus, Medibank, and Latitude last year, which was a terrible year in the press for a lot of these large businesses. And one of our sales reps at Arctic Wolf was a victim of all three of those breaches. So he's had his details compromised 3 times. But, those organizations weren't alone. We just didn't see the level of press for all of the other breaches that happened just day in, day out until last year. So it was a bit of a watershed moment, I think, for Australia last year, which was more coincidence than anything that Arctic Wolf came into country last year, because it was in the planning for a few years before that. So they, leadership couldn't have predicted that Australia was going to have such a corker of an issue last year with cyber events.
So maybe tell us a bit about Arctic Wolf. Tell us a bit about the company.
Yep, absolutely. So Arctic Wolf, we've been in business since 2010, actually. So the company was founded then, a couple of years in stealth mode, and then came to market in 2012. And it was founded by the original founding team for Blue Coat. So if you've been in security for a while, you might remember Blue Coat Systems, sort of the earliest of the web proxies. They were eventually acquired by Symantec, and then the leadership team from Blue Coat played significant roles in Symantec moving forward. The founding team from Blue Coat, when they were looking for the next business problem to solve in technology, had a few things they were looking at, but decided on focusing on security operations for the mid-market or the mid-sized companies. Back in sort of 2009, 2010, long before the term managed detection and response was a thing, let alone a magic quadrant anyway. And that is the industry that Arctic Wolf is in. So we are sort of one of the world's leading managed detection and response providers. We do security operations 24/7 for a little over 5,500 organizations worldwide. That represents a little over 3 million individuals. Been in the US mostly exclusively for about 10 years. Went into Europe about 2 and a bit years ago. Great success there, great growth. Again, just the right time, I think, in the industry. And then came into Australia very intentionally in October last year with a full investment of people. Started with 3 people back in October. We're a team of mid-20s now. SOC operations, led out of Australia with a security services team here as well. So really heavily investing in growth in Australia. In the security operations space, and I can talk a little bit about sort of the unique take that we have on that, but very specifically focused on the mid-market of Australia.
Great.
Quite different to vendors that I've worked at before.
Yeah, okay. We'll go into the whys and wherefores of that a little later. So it's interesting that you say MDR. So there's definitely a lot of confusion in the market. So my initial feel would have been to say Arctic Wolf does SOC SIEM. Am I right or wrong?
You could look at it as, in a way, you're right. It's sort of SOC SIEM as a service.
Right.
Right. So if I compare some previous companies that I've worked at, generally you could split an organization into, we're a provider of products. So let me sell you a product, and you can choose to operate that product yourself. And perhaps as a vendor, I've got some skill in that product as well. You'd hope so, since I wrote it. And then I can choose to do an ancillary service, which is I'll operate that for you. And there's a flavor of MDR provider that does that. You can think of it as like managed, endpoint detection and response, or a managed XDR service. But the predominant function of the company is to sell software. On the flip side,
that's why I'm confused, because I don't think you do that.
That's spot on, exactly. So on the other side, you have services only companies, which is, I don't buy software. I operate generally somebody else's software. So I might, acquire some software from a third party, and then I'll run kind of the traditional MSSP model, and I'll do a managed SIEM maybe on your premise, or a managed SIEM in my cloud, but I manage somebody else's product for you. There's a small sort of subset of the market, a small grouping of companies, of which Arctic Wolf is one, and to the best of my knowledge is the pioneer here, which is we don't use somebody else's platform. We've had to invest in building, a SOC, a SIEM platform, an XDR platform that can operate at the kind of scale that Arctic Wolf operates at. Globally, multi-region data center, 5,000 plus customers, big multi-tenancy scale. But the function of that software is to make the 600 plus security operations and analysts that we have really good at doing their job for the customers that subscribe to the service. So it is a managed detection and response service, ingesting or using all the infrastructure and the security tools that a mid-market customer would have already bought. So we don't care what that is. You could be, Microsoft Office 365. You could be Google Workspace. You could be Defender on the endpoint. You might be CrowdStrike. There's lots of variation in what people have been sold and what people have chosen to deploy. But the outcome that we're trying to drive is the same across all of them, which is take all of your tooling, whatever that might be, and then extract every piece of security value that we can from it to do SecOps 24/7 on top of it.
Yep.
Right. And so there's method in my madness here.
Yeah.
So just to what you're replacing. So definitely, if someone has Arctic Wolf, they don't need their own SIEM.
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to make that clear. So you wouldn't need a Sentinel or Microsoft Sentinel or whatever. You're providing a SIEM, which is for your 600 odd, security analysts to use, and the SOC, the skilled bodies. But a customer would need their own endpoint antivirus or EDR tool, whether that be from whoever, whether it's Microsoft Defender, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, Sophos, whatever it is, you can work with any of those. So the customer needs the BYO EDR tool, endpoint detection and response tool, but you guys will provide everything outside of that. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's important to note that it's not just the EDR tool. So, if we look at what a customer will typically have in their environment, they'll have some kind of endpoint protection, whether it's kind of modern or maybe a little bit legacy, but they'll have something on the endpoint for security. They'll have something that, generally perimeter firewalls. They'll have some mail security. They'll have networks and DNS and all these other sources of telemetry that are useful for security operations. We take all of that as well. So it's about, give us everything, because when we have it all, that's when we have the highest sort of chance of catching the bad actors when they do get through the protection and they land in the environment. And I think, Tom, you sort of mentioned this earlier, actually, so did Josh, just around the reputational damage that we're seeing coming out the back of some of these breaches. When we think about what we're trying to do with managed security operations, we're really trying to address the impact for when something bad happens. Right. So if you think about risk as the probability of some bad thing happening and then the cost of when that bad thing happens, MDR is generally focused on, hey, let's catch it quickly. Let's minimize the impact. Something gets through. Let's identify it, capture it, contain it. Yes, it got through, but let's minimize the impact so that it doesn't become a massive outage.
So the Dorothy Dix, Steve. So don't CrowdStrike and Sophos do MDR already? So why would they need? To have Arctic Wolf as well.
Yep. So all of the endpoint vendors are sort of in that first category that I talk about, which is we have some tool. We can sell you the tool. You can operate the tool, or we can operate the tool for you.
Yeah.
And so if you've got you're a big company, you've got your own SIM, you've got your own analysts looking at the endpoint security console for any of the brands that have that, then you could do that. But maybe you're small or it's not core to your business. You don't want to use your staff for that purpose. You can subscribe to the managed service from those providers. Now the challenge with that is that's generally it's managed technology. So if I'm an EDR provider, it's managed EDR. And so there's been some debate in the analyst community in both Gartner and Forrester about kind of changing the terminology. So we talk about MDR, but when you talk about MDR from from Arctic Wolf's perspective, it's managed kind of XDR. It's managed SOC as a service, and it's any telemetry source. When we talk about it from an endpoint vendor, it's managed EDR. So if it's a firewall that's compromised, and that's what's lit up the alert, that's not coming into the managed EDR provider. It's got to come through that EDR tool. And that's one of the big differences.
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to, I wanted to bring that out, because that's when we talk to customers about Arctic Wolf, like, oh, but CrowdStrike does it. Well, no, they're just looking at the endpoint device, whereas you guys are getting telemetry from the network, from the firewalls, from DNS, from M365. You're getting a much broader view and then providing, a much more holistic. So why? So I suppose the problem you're solving really is multiple, but it's really around security operations. So why? Maybe talk about that problem. Why is it so hard for people to do security operations well?
Yeah, well, especially in the mid-market, couple of things. So the number one challenge is talent in Australia. And we were preparing for a conference and doing some research on what the talent market looks like in Australia, and trying to get some facts around, like how many security operations professionals are there available in the market in Australia. And interestingly, the Australian census back in 2021 actually added some experimental data fields. And so you can go out and have a look at on the ABS, the Bureau of Stats website, and kind of do this analysis yourself. They added job codes to the questionnaire. Now, I don't remember what job code I put down back in 2021. I mostly remember the ABS website going down and that causing all kinds of issues. But we pulled, so you can go in, you can kind of pull the number of folk that have self-elected to indicate that they're in the cybersecurity profession. And I don't know if you want to take a punt, but like if you think of everybody in Australia that is in security, in cybersecurity, and that's risk, compliance, audit, technical security professionals, like all of those. Take a punt. How many folk would have
20,000? I say 20,000.
20,000. It's not a bad guess, Tom. I would have guessed higher than that. I would have thought it would have been like 60 or 70. Like, I've worked with security teams in some of these large companies, the big banks that are 200-300 people just themselves. Right. And that number includes defence as well. So it includes the government, federal government, Commonwealth, and defence. The number at 2021 was 10,818.
Yeah, right. There you go.
When that figure popped, now that might not be 100% accurate, right? That's just people that have self-elected.
Yeah.
But the membership of ASA, so the Australian Information Security Association, is a little over 10,000. So you sort of think, and that includes students and whatnot. So it's sort of lining up that there's somewhere in that 10 to 15,000 security professionals across all categories of security. And there's another interesting stat in that, which was there is a subcategory where you can elect to indicate you're a technical professional. So there's a job code for cybersecurity technical operations specialists. And the number there was about 4,200.
Oh,
right. What are the rest of them doing? I guess
audit, risk and compliance, leadership, training, whatever that might be.
Sure. Is that why they all want $200,000 each to sit on the?
They're in like it. Yep. So you've just sort of hit the nail on the head. Like, what is one of the challenges in the mid market? If I want to go and staff a 24, so two things. First up, can I get talent to do an 8x5 job?
No.
To do security operation.
It's my experience. No, you can't get that.
Pretty hard to do, right? And you guys are on the provider side too. So you're, in a technical role with a technical company. You offer a lot of career opportunities to people coming and working in tech in your companies. Tech is security operations is a context activity for most mid-market customers.
That's right.
It's not core to their business. Tech innovation might be, but not security operations. And so when it comes to doing, the question that I ask for when we're sort of introducing, we're talking through what Arctic Wolf does. We take all your telemetry, we put, analysts on it 24/7 and we watch. The penny kind of drops really quickly, which is I can't hire one security operations analyst. And so generally I'm taking somebody who's interested in the topic and has an IT background, and then I'm training them. And then as soon as I train them, they get a couple certs and they disappear and they get hired by you guys or hired by me. And so it's really challenging for the mid-market customers to staff a security operations team and keep those folk over time.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that we solve for.
Yeah. And it's worse than that, isn't it? Because guess what? They want to go on leave. And they don't want to work in the evenings or the mornings. Whereas the bad guys do want to work 24/7, as it turns out. So having a guy working 8 till 5, it's not that helpful. You really need someone. I know I'm feeding into your story, Steve, but I've been there. We've gone through these conversations so many times. Like, why are we just getting one person? We actually need an army of these people. Can't do that. We don't have the budget for that.
So Steve, we've covered off the EDR vendors doing MDR. So what about, I go to, local security provider, ABC Consulting, and they'll provide me a SOC. So why would we go to, Arctic Wolf instead of them?
Yep, and I'd say this is sort of a good question to ask about why go to a larger MDR provider who's focused in this area, not even Arctic Wolf, though we have some game in this space. And that model is the model that's mostly used in mid-market. It's like, I'll have somebody manage my Microsoft Sentinel, or I'll have somebody manage my on-prem QRadar or whatever. The challenge with that is a couple of things around that. So first up, the experience of that company or their ability to respond to threats is limited or is informed by the number of customers that they look after. Right? So the landscape you protect gives you a certain education. Right? So if I'm looking after 10 customers, I'm only going to see, other than external threat intel and my own research in the industry, but I'm only going to be seeing production traffic from those 10 organizations, and I'll be cutting my teeth on those 10 organizations. With the larger providers, so Arctic Wolf, 5,500 odd customers worldwide, across all industries, across all sizes, across all markets and all geographies. What that gives us the ability to do is a couple of different terms for it. You can think of it as like community immunity. I like to call it collective defense, but it means that if we protect if we see a threat in the one, so a couple of things on this. So 600 analysts doing security operations on 5,000 plus customers, massive attack landscape that are informing our threat research and kind of honing the skills of our cyber analysts. But if we see a novel attack in a architecture firm in New York City at 8:00 on a Friday night, and our security analysts have rolled that up through threat intel, and they've done the research and they've written a detection for that because now we've seen this. What that means is that the other 5,500 customers worldwide, a healthcare provider in Australia, is now that operations function has now captured that attack and that TTP, that technique, and we're now monitoring 5,500 customers for exactly that same thing. So that diversity of the attack landscape gives a huge advantage to the skills of the security operations team, but it also means that detections we can write can be really kind of complete.
Yeah,
we're mining such a big data set.
Yeah, Steve, there was an interesting example of that with the SolarWinds exploit. What was it last year, the year before, where they got in and they wrote software that got into that firmware that was then rolled out to thousands of customers. The argument there, the counter argument to what you're saying is, well, okay, that's great. If you're a big fish for organizations in your world, that's great. You get all the love. But if you're a small fish, you're kind of down the queue a bit and you don't always get the best people. How did you guys respond to that, and how did you make sure your customers were protected in that space?
Yeah, and there's been a couple of those actually. So those sorts of events, which are like sort of industry-wide external events. SolarWinds is one. Log4j was probably the more recent one. That was last year. And I'll use the Log4j example, which is the same as SolarWinds.
Yeah.
Because the impact was pretty similar, but I actually have a specific talk track that I learned from the experience of Arctic Wolf at the time, because that was a question, Tom, that I asked as S2 leaders, as security services leaders, as S2 for us. When I joined, it was like, talk me through how you responded to this, because this was an industry event. It's 4 or 5 months old, like it's pretty massive, and it was really interesting. So and we have a timeline actually on the website that gives us more detail on this, but because we're watching. We're watching the security telemetry from all of these customers. We know a lot about their environments, right? And something that's unique about Arctic Wolf, as opposed to a general MDR provider. A general MDR provider will be waiting to respond to an alert that has been detected in the environment. So it's very reactive, right? Which is cool. That's the process, is minimize impact, catch it. There's a proactive part of what Arctic Wolf does. So we're not purely focused on the kind of detect and respond part of the NIST security framework. We're also on the identify and protect side and recover as well. And so because when we've onboarded a customer, we know a lot about their environment. We know what they have, and we know what's sending us telemetry. We know what assets they've got. We're able to identify, like, oh my gosh, this customer here is potentially exposed to vulnerability to Log4j. The net of it was something like 3,000 plus customers were potentially affected by exploitability with Log4j that were Arctic Wolf customers. And so the security operations team out of Canada and Frankfurt and the US, we weren't in Australia when this happened at the time, literally made outreach contact to 3,500 customers. Now that was a physical phone call, all hands on deck. But because we have visibility, we can quantify not only this is the event that's happening in the world, but here's the scope of impact for you, and here's what we need to do. Here's what we need to do together to minimize the impact for you and to get ready for this thing that's coming or has already come. And it's interesting. I asked the team, how often does this happen? Like, this is pretty ridiculous. And it used to be about every 16 months,
right?
Till about a year and a half ago, and now it's looking more like 6 to 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing some kind of industry-wide mass applicable vulnerability that's causing this sort of response. But that's how we responded to that. It was, that those events require us to do outreach.
Yeah, so Steve, you guys don't just do detection and response as well, right? You do managed end user training. You have a concierge service. You do vulnerability management. Do you want to maybe talk through the breadth of things that Arctic Wolf does?
Yeah, so sort of uniquely in the managed detection and response space, we still do proactive work. So that description I gave you there for the Log4j response, that was just for MDR customers. Oh. But if we think about risk as probability and impact, then and we'll talk about humans in a second, but impact is for MDR. Make sure you've got enough signals to catch somebody bad in the environment and then contain and take action when you do. So minimize the impact. Probabilities, make it hard for them to get in the first place. Mm-hmm. All right, now that predominantly revolves around vulnerability management. Let's identify the attack surface that an attacker is interrogating and interacting with, trying to get in. And that is external. That is every IP address and every part of your property that you're exposing to the internet. It is your external identity. It is your through things like Okta or Office 365. Business email compromise is, at the moment, our number one concern. It's the number one most exploited form of criminal activity. So there's an external attack surface, and then there's an internal attack surface, which is traditional vulnerability management. And so Arctic Wolf looks to address both sides of that equation. MDR for the impact side, plus some proactive. Manage risk, which is managed vulnerability management, internal, external, and endpoint. And then the weakest link in all of this is invariably, it's our end users. But there's two ways to look at end users, right? You can look at them as the weak link, and you've got to try and educate them to protect them, or you can look at them as really your first line of defense. And that's the way that Arctic Wolf looks at it. So we have a managed security awareness offering, and it's all managed. So mid-market customers don't have the time, they don't have the expertise, and nor is it core to their mission to manage this stuff internally. And so it's almost like, flick the box and turn it on. We want managed detection response. Great. Send us all the telemetry. We've now got security operations 24/7 with guided remediation. All right. I want to minimize the probability of an attack getting in. All right. Let's turn on managed risk. Now we're doing internal, external vulnerability management managed by Arctic Wolf, prioritization by Arctic Wolf with a bit more business context, because your assets in the business context better than we do, but we're opinionated around what we're doing. And then build a culture of security with the staff. Let's get them being the first line of defense, because if they don't click that link, if they're ignoring the ATO, the ATO voicemail that you're getting, or here in Sydney, we get a lot of these linked toll road scams coming through. I had one just last week that
I get them.
Presentation.
Yeah, them.
We all get so that education carries actually out of the organization into your private life, right? Yep. So whether you're responding to a smishing attempt because of your personal exploitation or it's going to affect your company, it's the same thing. And so managed security awareness training is Arctic Wolf going, hey, we're going to take the responsibility for a bi-weekly cadence with phishing training, like in an entertaining format. Let's work on educating the staff around cyber hygiene, cyber resilience, in contemporary cyber topics, but not in a way that massively affects their work, because I can't do a 30-minute training session once a month. It needs to be 2 to 5 minutes twice a week, and once a fortnight, and that's about it.
Okay, no,
Very
it's good. And is there, do you guys put a device on prem? Is the agents? How does it? What's the?
Yeah. So in terms of
How's that work?
deployment, and it's actually something back to when Tom mentioned the query about kind of endpoint response, and other vendors are doing this as well. For Arctic Wolf, a little stat for you. At the moment, we're ingesting about 3.4 trillion observations a week into our various security clouds around the world. So massive, massive scale. But those are obviously just raw observations. Not every one of those turns into an alert. That's just the stream of stuff that we need to sort of synthesize and process in the pipeline to work out whether something malicious is potentially happening. So we take that massive volume of data, and then that gets through technology, through rules and through machine learning, gets filtered down into a smaller number of potential true positives. So we call those investigations. And those investigations get thrown up to a board, and a human analyst gets involved with those. We do, if my stats are right, I think we do 11,000 of those a week. And so and then a subset of those will get ticketed, right? And that's where a customer will get a ticket from Arctic Wolf. We'll get outreach from their concierge team, the security team that is known to the customer and works with them on a regular basis. And then the interesting question that you can ask is, well, of all of the tickets that get created, the true positive tickets, what percentage come from endpoint sources? So if I've got an endpoint tool and I'm just looking at endpoint tooling, of all of these investigations that turn into tickets, that turn into things that we're interacting with the customer around, only about 15% come from endpoint by itself. So 85% are coming from other sources, network, firewall, identity, SaaS API, log streams, information out of AWS and Microsoft, O365, rule triggering. So where was I going with that? So in terms of sort of the deployment side for us, so yes, we want to tie into your EDR, but then we, as part of the service, will deploy a network sensor.
Right.
We generally put a network sensor anywhere there's an internet north-south link. And we'll put an endpoint, I don't want to call it an agent, but we have an endpoint event collector, the Arctic Wolf agent, that sits on the endpoint. It doesn't have to be deployed, but we highly recommend it. And that's a second line of defense, where you got your endpoint protection tool that's there trying to identify something bad happening on the endpoint. The Arctic Wolf agent just takes all of the events and forwards them up to the cloud, forwards them up to the Arctic Wolf platform. And what sometimes happens is you'll find an attacker behavior on an endpoint that doesn't trigger the EDR tool. Sort of almost like low and slow, normal user operation, but taken with the visibility we have over time, we're able to build detections using just the event stream. And there have absolutely been cases where the endpoint tool didn't light up with an alert, but the Arctic Wolf agent did.
Yeah, right. Because
So
seeing a broader context.
I mean, and in today's world, right, it's all very good to have endpoint detection or whatever, but the reality of it, so much happens in the cloud. So there's everyone's happening in SharePoint or Microsoft Cloud Services or Google Cloud Services, and so they go through some endpoint, but maybe that's going through a phone or it's going through a home device or something where there's no. So that today's modern IT architecture it's not that old school. Everyone's on our network. They've all VPN'd in. They're going through one network connection. It's not that anymore. So obviously you've got an architecture, Steve, that deals with that problem.
Yeah, it plugs into, whether you've got kind of a traditional on-prem, predominantly Microsoft environment, which is well suited to the Essential 8. I was listening to the Essential 8 podcast that you guys put on a little while ago. So I was like, yeah, absolutely spot on. But that's really, it's very ACSC admit that's a very Microsoft-centric sort of approach to security framework. Or if you're more modern cloud, you're running in, Chromebooks with Google and doing predominantly everything in the cloud, all of that sends telemetry into the Arctic Wolf cloud, and we do SecOps on top of that. But what we find in mid-market is a blend of both. And so,
that's right.
You'll be 70% this way and 30% this way, or you'll acquire a company that's less modern than you are, and you have to do, you don't want to modernize it in order to be able to secure it. So we got to meet customers where they're at. There is one other thing, thinking about Essential 8, actually. We get a lot of questions about this now. The ACSC has done a great job kind of pushing that outside of Commonwealth government and into the private market. And it's really well suited to the mid-market. The challenge with that is that the people that want to look at the kind of understand what Essential 8, how do I do it? Like I hear it's a thing that I need to care about. I hear about these maturity levels, which one should I get to? they don't have the security staff to dig into that. So they're relying on partners, which is awesome. But we also have a view on that. So one of the jobs of the concierge team in Australia is to tailor our service for market conditions. And so in Australia, that's Essential 8, it's CPS 234. It's the SOCI Act, the Security of Critical Infrastructure. And in the event, the blessed event, that a customer never got an alert from their MDR provider. So you get to the end of your 12-month subscription, you've sent them all your telemetry, you get to the end of that, and you never got a call. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing, right? You didn't get breached. Happy days. Nobody found a breach, so that's cool. But in that 12 months, you missed a real opportunity to improve your security posture over time. But you don't have a team to go do that work for you.
That's right.
That's the whole point. And that's what the concierge team at Arctic Wolf does.
Right.
So we call them spiders, so security posture in-depth reviews, but these little bite-sized pieces of security improvement work that, in conjunction with our partners and with the end user who may have no security skills, the mission is just to get whatever the topic is they care about. Really common ones right now are cyber insurance or cyber insurance renewal, like getting ready for the next insurance renewal, because that's gone from being relatively easy to being really quite cumbersome. Well, that's a job that the concierge team can work through. Like, we can help them with a questionnaire. They want to go to Essential 8. Tell me about Essential 8.
Is that part of the service, or is it an additional cost?
Oh no, that's rolled in. That's just part of how we do MDR. That's what concierge do for us.
Awesome.
And it's a virtuous circle, because the better the environment the customer has, the more hardened and secure and better they get over time. The less likely they're going to get breached, the less likely they're going to need the MDR side, the reactive side of what we do.
And hopefully better insurance costs as well, which is
well, it's interesting. So we, like in Australia, what I've been hearing anecdotally, but also seeing in the press, has been insurance premiums, cyber insurance and premiums in Australia have been going up at 80 to 100% a year every year for the last 3 years. And I'm like, yep, totally get that. We can see that why that would be the case, with, especially when you mentioned $76 million cost of breach for the Latitude. Like, my God. Something interesting that I saw last week when we were prepping for this conference that's coming up in a few weeks was in the UK. I'm trying to remember the vendor that brought that out. I think it was Horton's. They've actually seen a slight decline in cyber insurance premium rate growth. And it's not like, I don't think it's come down, but it was going up 2020, 21, and it's stabilized. Okay. And the reason for that is twofold. Attacker behavior coming down because of what's happening in Ukraine. So ransomware crews were based in were based in Russia and based in Ukraine, attacking externally, suddenly got pulled into military operations attacking each other. So that dropped.
Right. Okay.
But then this really cumbersome cyber security renewal questionnaire that comes out from the insurers has been forcing customers to improve their posture in the UK. And so the environments have got better. The insurers recognize it because they're able to do a better discovery. And they're like, okay, you are a good risk, and therefore I can price your premium appropriately.
That's fascinating.
I'm hoping that happens here in Australia, because it's been going nuts for the last couple of years.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Steve, I've got a few questions for you, if I can jump in. More general questions about security and what you're seeing. The first question I've got is, what do you see with the AI and how the impact that's having on security, both defending and attacking?
Yeah, look, this is if there's one question that I'm getting in every kind of roundtable lunch or when we're having a conversation, not even with prospects or customers, but just in industry, it is around AI. And certainly, I've been, having come from Google as well into Arctic Wolf, Google has a great heritage in kind of leading AI research, but the world changed when OpenAI dropped ChatGPT on the world September last year. And so it's an opportunity. In cybersecurity, AI and machine learning, those techniques have been in play for a long time. So it's nothing. So that is nothing new. So the use of machine learning and the use of models of ML models in cyber, not new. We have a bunch of models we use in the pipeline, have done for years, to do things like noise reduction and correlation and behavior baselining, etc. That's all pretty standard stuff. The bit that's new is this generative piece, the fact that we can use large language models to interact and synthesize large volumes of data and create a response that is human readable and has synthesized concepts and delivered it externally. So the shout out to Microsoft with Security Copilot, like what they've done in Sentinel. That's super interesting. Like I see, and that's the work in Arctic Wolf. We have a research group called Arctic Wolf Labs, and that's where our data science team live, and that's where the threat researchers live, and it's also where product R&D rolls up onto. And so the mission for that team, talking with them about AI and generative AI specifically, is what are we going to use generative AI for? And it is, in the first instance, it's about making the security analyst's job better.
Yep.
So it improves their speed of research, their investigations. Like they can ask questions of the data as opposed to have to going into running queries themselves and crafting those queries. So that's going to land in the consumer land. If you're using, you're running your own security operations team, their ability to do a good job is going to get better with this technology. That's great. And it's going to be the same for us. Like our ability to do that at scale is going to be better. That's brilliant. On the flip side, the attackers tend to be better at using this stuff early.
Yep.
They're incented to, they're super well funded. They're essentially very professional organizations with large scale R&D and no constraints as well.
Yep.
They're not worried about, AI ethics, for example. Also, it's already turning up. Phishing emails are massively improved by the quality of what comes out of, generative AI. You can tailor it very rapidly at scale to be very specific to an industry, a segment, a customer, a news event. And so, what would have been hard before, which is I'm going to do very targeted phishing on a particular organization related to something I've seen in the news. You're only going to do that for a select group of customers that are very, very likely targets, historically, because it's heavy lifting. Well, now with automation, you can do that to every customer. It's not quite set and forget, but it's almost that way.
Yeah.
And so I see that to me is concerning in the mid-market because one of the comments that we've seen made is that the cost of what becomes attractive e-crime has been getting lower and lower. You don't need to get $20 million out of Medicare. If you can get $600 out of an individual, well, that's becomes a monthly salary in some of these emerging countries. So it's worth doing it if it's easy to get. But the challenge has been getting it down to that scale, and that's where AI automation is making it much easier to do.
Yeah, that's frightening, isn't it? That's absolutely frightening. And then I guess the other question maybe rolls onto this one is, where do you think where are you seeing IT leaders, managers, whatever, being blindsided? Where are they going? Oh my God, I didn't see that. What sort of security things are you seeing? You're hearing about where they're just going, shit, I thought we had that covered. I thought that we had that under control, but they didn't.
Yeah, I feel this is almost a problem of the cybersecurity industry's making, and I feel bad about this because I was part of that problem up until just recently. When you look at, I'll try and keep this brief because it could be a really long-winded answer, but the cybersecurity product landscape is massive.
Yeah.
Right? And every year you go to RSA. Every year there's 700 odd new vendors at a show that has 3,500 vendors.
Yeah.
So even at the very big end of town, when you've got dedicated cyber teams and a CISO, staying up to date on what the cybersecurity industry is saying to you should care about is really difficult. And we've all got a vested interest in making you care about my topic of interest. My OT security was a big thing a couple of years ago, right? So care about my OT security product. Then the browser-based security is a big deal. So care about my browser-based security product. And so you've got to unpick all of these vendor claims related to their technology and why it matters to you right now. Now, at the big end of town, great, you've got a staff that can probably do that. In the mid-market, you're exposed to all the same threats. You have all the same infrastructure. Maybe you don't have as many endpoints, but you've got all the same technology running on your 500 endpoints that the big banks have running on 200,000 endpoints, but you don't have staff to do anything about it. And you're having to unpick or understand, from the vendors, what is it that I need to care about? So when we've gone in, we've talked to business leaders, because generally we're not talking to CISOs, we're talking to the IT director or the owner of the company, right? If it's a family-owned company. And couple consistent themes. So number one is I've spent a boatload of money on this. Why is this not sorted? Have I not spent enough for this to be taken care of?
Yes.
And the answer is yes, but we didn't quite get to the point that we decided to operate it really well. There's no decision you've made that was the wrong decision. but we haven't taken it to the point we're going to get all the value out of it that you want. And it was not for lack of good intent that the vendors put you in this spot. And so they come back to me and it's like, well, how much more do we need to do? I can't hire a team. We've already covered that off. Even if I could hire somebody, they're generally super expensive. As Josh mentioned before, you like super hard to pay for talent. And they're not going to stay with me. So I have a talent problem. I can't operate this stuff. Is it super expensive for me to go do this? And the bit that tends to open their eyes is like when you get to the scale that we get to, it is really cost effective to operate the stuff that you've already invested in effectively 24/7. That's sort of one realization. The second one that was an interesting one was I'm really surprised even still at how we assume cyber sits at a board level in every company. And it doesn't all the time. Right? There's a lot more guidance from the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Their cyber guidance last year was really good. But sometimes you're talking to boards that think this is an IT problem. It's still in 2023. And quantifying potential loss is always fraught with danger because it can be things like reputational damage, super hard to quantify. But I got a tip from one of our customers that came on board. And this is, no names will be used here, but this is sort of a bit anecdotal. We had been talking to them before they got breached. It's just, they were known to us and we were talking to them. The person we were talking to, who's the head of IT, was formerly a practitioner in this style of professional services business. He's like, yeah, look, I love it, but my board's really not interested. And like, talk to us next year. Okay, no problems. And he had all the good tech too. It's like everything that would plug in really well. It's all very modern, good backups, all solid. No security operations function. They get breached. They got breached about 2 weeks later. And we thought, aha, now they're going to care. No, they still didn't care. Spent a little. No, they didn't get widely compromised. Like it was a contained breach. You know, there were ransomware, but it wasn't everything. Business was still functional. Called an incident response team. You know, it wasn't us, but do some mop up. And they spent, their whatever it was, 12, 15 grand doing recovery. Now it wasn't full recovery. It was just sort of good enough recovery. About a week later, they didn't get to root point of compromise, so they didn't close the gate. And so the attacker came back in again, and this time with the lessons learned on the first time, did comprehensively take that organization down, shut the whole thing down. And it's sort of okay. It's a somewhat good news story. They had really good backups. So they had really good backups. They were able to re-engage investment response, the incident response company, close the gate, kick the attacker out. So evict and prevent. That's great. And now they've got recovery. They've got to, rebuild up, they restore from backup, blow everything away. And they deal with very large data sets. And so it took, the business was offline for 5 days.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, that's not terrible for the size, a couple hundred endpoints. They did recover. But then the IT leader at the organization, who hadn't been getting any airtime with the board, he said, look, I've just calculated our loss in terms of salaries for people that need a computer to do their job, that sat on their butt or that we sent home. And that comes out at $67,000 a day.
Yeah.
So we've taken a $300,000 cost this week, just in productivity, just salaries we're paying that we're not getting anything from. No reputational damage, no opportunity cost for no work. Just that figure was multiples of what it would have cost them to protect themselves in the first place.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a complicated business case. It doesn't have to factor in all these soft costs that often boards are like, look, I don't buy how you're valuing that. How did you get that valuation?
Yeah. And then there was a tangible cost. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
I always said like a minor heart attack is a great thing. It can really change. Yeah, it's a wake up call at a board level that's real, but it doesn't destroy the business. If you're lucky, right? Like some are very unlucky, they just get the full heart attack and they're wiped out. We can name some of those companies, but we won't on this show.
No, exactly right. And one of the things I love about having made this shift out of product vendor land. So when I was at Forescat, loved that technology, and when it was implemented and operated really effectively, it did exactly what we said it did. But generally, what would happen is the champion of that technology, the person with the skills, would move on.
Oh, right.
And then whether somebody would pick it up or not.
You live for the toys, and people aren't using them. I've seen it time and time. Josh has seen it time and time again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're going to run out of time. I don't know, Josh.
I think we are. We could talk for hours. Steve, do you have any sort of last thing if you want to point, if people are interested? Obviously, we're a partner of Arctic Wolf, so they can come and talk to me or their CSG account manager. But do you want to sort of people can come and look you up, or
So of course you can.
Somewhere?
hit me up on LinkedIn. Stephen Hunter. You can find me at Arctic Wolf. One thing I'll say is that the mission for Arctic Wolf in Australia, and my personal mission, having joined Arctic Wolf, is to protect the mid-market of Australia. And the way we do that is in partnership, right? We do it in partnership with you and with the customers, the organizations themselves. But this is a solvable problem, and it's a lot more cost effective than people realize. And I really love being on the hook for having to deliver an outcome and not sell somebody a piece of software.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thanks so much, Steve. Episode 50. Really appreciate you coming on. I think it's been fantastic. Tom?
It's great, Steve. Really appreciate it. I think you're right about, look, we've got to migrate from the toys and trying to glue it all together and operate it to actually being far more mature about the operation of security. I think your message there is very clear.
Thanks so much for having me on, Tom. And Josh, can't wait to listen to episode 51.
Yes, thanks, Steve. And thank you, Tom, as always. And thanks you for listening, watching. We appreciate you being loyal to the show. If anyone wants to reach out, as always, you can get me at jrubens@cloudsolutionsgroup.com.au or via LinkedIn. And thanks once again.